from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you. Thursday night edition of the program. If you want to join us, give us a call, 833-482-5337-8334 Valdez. And the House of Representatives voted to advance a bill temporarily to avert a government shutdown. That bill is heading to President Biden's desk. So they made it. They made it. I had a feeling they would. It seemed like a good decision, this Mike Johnson. It seemed like he's the type of guy that can get things done. And by that, I mean make concessions. I know. Listen, a lot of people right now throwing stuff at their radios. You're a rhino, Rich. We hate you nuts. I'm not saying I approve and I like any of this stuff. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying he looks like he's like a McCarthy, a guy that can get things done. Oftentimes, it's very difficult to get things done if you stick by your principle. I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, right? Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm just saying in Washington, when you have a whole bunch of Democrats and a razor-thin majority of Republicans, the only way you're going to get things done, I think, is with a shutdown, right? I think you have to shut the government down time and again. Every single time you're going to have to fight tooth and nail in order to send the message that, hey, we're going to shut this thing down every single time until we like what we see, until we're spending less money, until we're back to pre-COVID spending. God forbid we get to pre-COVID spending. And I don't know that there's the political will, the political fortitude to do that in Washington. So if you want to avoid that and you want to not rock the boat and you want things to be smooth, Johnson is your man. McCarthy's your man. Those are the guys that are going to do that. There's also people out there that'll sit there and, break everything. I'm not against that in many ways, right? I think Washington needs that. I think that's why people like Trump. Because they're saying he's a bull in a China shop. Sometimes that's exactly what you need in the China shop, right? We don't need China. We need the bull. Anyway, that's the story on that. There's also some audio I want to get to because they just don't stop with this attack. Yesterday, I opened up with the show with my experience at this gluten-free keto bakery I go to. I love it. It's a tremendous bakery. Wonderful family runs the place. But she was very upset with me. She, like I mentioned yesterday, her final words to me were, that's the problem. She makes the sign of money with her fingers. And she says, you're only concerned with your bottom line, and that's sad. And after she had told me about, people that are brown being held back by Trump and his presidency. And I was saying, I wasn't held back. I don't think my children were held back. Anyway, this reaction that I got, it comes from a place that lives at MSNBC, right? Because people like Joy Ann Reid, who, by the way, Joy Reid used to do a podcast. And she used to use the studio, 10 feet away from where I used to sit when I worked in Manhattan at a studio that's not there anymore. But there used to be a studio 17 floors above Madison Square Garden in New York City. And when I was there in the newsroom, and she would come in, and she was actually very pleasant. She would, nod hello to the people that she saw, and she would do her show, and she'd leave, and there was never any incident. She was always very polite. But Joy Reid, on television, she lets all of us have it, right? And by all of us, I mean anybody who doesn't agree with her. Now, on this program, you can disagree with me, and maybe occasionally I might let somebody have it, but rarely, right? Because I always invite the dissent. I invite that type of discourse so that we can have a conversation about things we disagree with. I don't expect anybody to sway me on my thinking, and I don't expect to sway them on theirs. But I think we can make points, and and counterpoints and have a discussion. Well, Joy Reid, she's always on the attack. And that's okay. I'm on the attack most of the time, too. It's kind of what we do for a living. But yesterday, she was saying that it's Trump voters that want revenge on their fellow citizens. Listen to this.
It's a vengeance tour this time around. And that we talk about Trump all the time, we also need to talk about his voters. And I know it's not popular in the media world to not venerate the great American voter. But as Tom Nichols writes in The Atlantic, these particular voters want revenge as well on their fellow citizens. Nichols writes, the Republican base actively embraces Trump's grievances. It emulates his pettiness. It supports his childlike inability to accept responsibility. These voters are not sighing in resignation and voting for the lesser of 2 or 3 or 4 evils. They are getting what they want because they, too, are set on revenge.
Now, I think this is a fascinating thing, right? This article by Tom Nichols in The Atlantic, and this idea, this contention that this is purely about political payback. Because this, the media started putting this out there a few months ago. I don't know, 8 months ago or so. And my buddy, who came from Cuba on a jet ski to the United States, I remember going into his restaurant before he sold it, right? And he sold it back in July. And I remember him saying, listen, if Trump gets back in, these are 4 wasted years. And I said, why? I said, 4 years of energy production that brings us back to that dominant position that we were in when Trump was in. 4 more years of rolled back regulations for businesses so that they can earn some money. 4 more years of increased median household incomes. I'm down with all of these, right? And he says, no, because this is going to be all about vengeance. This is about Trump getting back at everybody who didn't support him when he was making the case that the election was stolen. This is going to be every last political rival of his. And it dawned on me that what my Cuban friend was telling me in Spanish while I was getting my morning coffee was exactly what he'd heard in some of the media reports. I don't know which media in particular, whether it was CNN, MSNBC, Univision. I don't know. But I know that many times they move in lockstep for the most part. And I thought to myself, and here we are. Joy Reid is saying the same exact thing, right? She's out there beating the same drum. She's saying this is it. This is the big deal, is that it's Trump voters. It's the Republican base. We're just as petty. We're just as petulant. And that may be true on both sides, right? I think there's a degree of pettiness that a lot of people espouse, like going into a business to buy, expensive baked goods and getting an earful about how me focused on the bottom line is a bad thing. Ultimately, we, those of you that agree with me, don't agree with the politics of the left. And they don't agree with the politics of those that embrace the Constitution. And I get that. There's a fundamental disagreement. That's fine. What's not fine is when we begin to demonize people, right? And this is what I do. And I'm happy to demonize pedophiles. I'm happy to demonize those that need to be demonized. But I try my best, and this is why I always invite callers that disagree to call in, and I try to be respectful. Because ultimately, in the life that I live, and I think you too, unless you live in one of those very red counties in a very red state, you're going to come across these people. And ultimately, I don't know what your faith is. I only know what my faith is, and I struggle at my faith every single day. I'm called to love these people, not to hate them. I can disagree with them, but I'm not here to destroy them, even if they want to destroy me, even if they want to destroy America, even if they want to destroy the future in this country that I aspire to have for my children. All we can do is disagree. And it starts in the media in many ways, right? Whether it's in The Atlantic or on MSNBC. They're out there putting out their ideas. And that's why I come in and I give you my ideas, right? And I share what I believe to be true. And that's all we can do. because the moment we start to just hate the other side, it's the moment we've lost. And it's the moment we've become just like them. And straight ahead, I want to talk about how they do that across the board. It's not just Joy Reid. It's not just The Atlantic. But the media, by and large, trashes and attacks Trump time and again, and they don't relent. The media bias is real, and we're going to get to the bottom of it straight ahead with Brent Bozell. He is the president of the Media Research Center, and he's coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations, everybody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
People didn't want to accept that it's not economic anxiety, it's racial anxiety, it's demographic panic. And to your very point, the reason that we needed Rachel Maddow to exist in the world, for most people to know how many Americans were fascist and were pro-Hitler in the 30s, in the 30s and 40s. People wanted to believe that all of America wanted to overthrow Hitler and was disdainful of fascism, when there was a giant chunk of America that was for fascism and wanted to replicate a Hitler in Washington, D.C.
Of course, that's Joy Reid from MSNBC. Spewing a little bit more of her rhetoric, comparing Republican voters to Nazi sympathizers, right, or fascist sympathizers. And it's this relentless attack that we see from the media when it comes to those that support Trump and Trump himself. And I want to get to the bottom of this because she references Rachel Maddow. And, of course, Rachel Maddow was out there the other day saying, look, we've made a conscious decision where we're not going to let you hear from Trump because Trump, of course, is, he's been known to lie. So we're going to withhold your ability to hear from Trump. And we have that audio. We'll play it in a little bit. But I want to bring in our guest because I think in America there's very few that are as good as this guy. He's the best, in my opinion, when it comes to calling out the media and their bias. Brent Bozell, he's the founder and president of the Media Research Center. Brent Bozell, welcome back, sir.
Rich, thank you very much for having me. My pleasure.
Likewise, sir. It's always a pleasure. Now, when you hear this clip of audio that we just heard, and one that I played prior to that, I'm not sure if you were on the line yet when we played that one, but Joy Reid is out here, and she's beating this drum that this is a vengeance tour. It is the Republicans who are AKA fascist sympathizers that are looking to replicate a Hitler in Washington, D.C. How do you react to that?
Well, Rich, I might be dating myself here a little bit, but I never thought that I would live to see the day where I would long for the good old days of Dan Rather and Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings.
I could take Brokaw, definitely not Rather.
But look, these if you were, these people aren't going to tell you what they really think because they're members of the club. But if you were speaking to them in private, they would tell you they are horrified. This was we once were dealing with a liberal media. These were people who were on the left of the political spectrum and were biased. And the bias that you saw was the bias by commission, and where they twisted a word, twisted a phrase, presented their argument in calling it objective, but in fact putting a political spin on it. Now what you're seeing, Rich, is the opposite. You're seeing the bias by omission. Not only will they not report that which goes against their negative, but more importantly, now they won't allow conservatives to speak because they truly believe conservatives are evil. The Joy Reid persona, look, she is speaking for the minds of many in the press right now. This is what they think of conservatives. So the idea that you look what they did with the president, where they're just announcing we're not going to allow him on. We don't like him. We're not going to let him speak. And we're seeing this, Rich, all over the country. And we can talk about it in a minute, but we have unearthed a program coming out of the United States government to, in effect, brainwash children in grade school to do just this.
Wow. Now, Brent Bozell, I hear that, and I wish I could say I'm shocked and dismayed and appalled, but I believe that this has been going on for quite a long time. Is it just that we now know that this program exists and we can call it out by name?
The censorship that you're seeing today, I really wasn't in effect until the Obama years. This is when it started, but it's on steroids now. They are making no bones about it because there's a program out there that the State Department and DHS are pushing through I'm not kidding you, an anti-domestic terrorism program to teach children all over the country that we are bad people, that conservatives are evil people. And I'm not making this up. This is, if you say that mutilating, for children to mutilate their bodies is an evil thing, and for teachers to promote this, you are, in fact, an evil person. If you question their radical agenda on climate change, you are an evil person. If you question their agenda on the border, if you dare use the phrase illegal aliens, you're a bad person, because not only are you wrong, but it gets to the core of what your character is in their mind's eye. This is how radical they've become. And what you've got is this Marxist attitude with these Maoist tendencies that you're having. I'm telling you that John F. Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, Joe Lieberman, these people would be appalled at what's happening to the Democratic Party now.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. It really is what we're seeing. And again, it's been out there for quite a while, like you said, since the Obama years. But what we're seeing now is and it's almost like whack-a-mole. Like every time they come up with a new way of creating censorship or what they call anti-disinformation, anti-misinformation, somebody will sue and that'll kind of quash that, and it'll pop up somewhere else in a different name, or they'll just pick up a phone and ask somebody in social media to do their bidding for them, or have someone on MSNBC do their bidding for them. And it's remarkable to me because it's really creating a counterproductive society. I was sharing earlier about an experience I had at a bakery I go to, and it's gluten-free and keto, and rare to find, brownies that don't have flour in them, and, they taste legitimate, and they're expensive. And I go there all the time. They're fantastic. Very nice family runs this place, but lo and behold, the woman asks me, she knows I work in radio, and she says, "Hey, how's the news business?" And I said, "Oh, it's action-packed." And she said, "Oh, have you heard about the Trump?" And she was trying to figure out the next word. And I said, "Oh, the caucuses?" And she made a scowl. And she said, "No, there's a new article out there saying that people think that Trump is God." And I said, "Oh, that's fantastic. I'd love to talk about that on my show." and I thought it was funny. And she was just angry. And we got into a small discussion. And let me tell you, it ended with her telling me that my view of this was sad because I was focused on the bottom line. And people like me are what's hurting our democracy. So we're going to continue that conversation straight ahead with Brent Bozell from the Media Research Center. He's the head of it, the founder of it, and he's not going anywhere. So you should do the same. Stick around. We're coming right back. I am Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision that we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision, but there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. That is a fundamental truth of our business and who we are. And so his remarks tonight will not air here live. We will monitor them and let you know about any news that he makes.
This was astonishing for me to hear as it happened, but they weren't the only ones. This seems to be the trend when it comes to Trump. And I take personal offense to it, being that I support Trump. And I think, man, this is what they think of me. Brent Bozell, welcome back. You just heard Rachel Maddow saying, look, we're going to figure out for you whether or not you should hear what Trump has to say, because we'll determine if it's newsworthy. We're not going to report and let you make your own mind up. We're going to do that for you.
Yeah, let me tell you something. There you have it in a nutshell, in one soundbite, the left. Listen to how dishonest she was in that statement. How dishonest. Where she says honestly, ... No, she should have said dishonestly. When they say they're not doing it out of spite, of course they're doing it. It's the only reason they're doing it out of spite. When she says they don't relish it, of course they relish it. They're loving what they're doing. They do believe that they're doing the work of the Lord. No, they don't believe in the Lord. They believe that,
the work of climate change.
Of something.
Yeah. Right.
But they really do believe that they are doing the noble thing. They relish doing this. So why not be honest? I mean, there's something about the left that is so frightening, that they do believe ends justify the means. They do believe that they can lie with impunity for a greater good, and you hit it. They have utter disdain for the little people. And these are the elites of the elites. They believe that you and I cannot discern truth from fiction. We don't know right from wrong. And they have to be the arbiters. Look, a reporter's job is to do the who, what, why, where, and nothing more. It's just simply to transcribe history and nothing more. They should, if they were to get out, but there's a reason, by the way, there's a reason why MSNBC on a very good day averages 700,000 viewers out of 335 million Americans.
That's a great point. That is a great point. And, and to your point before that you made earlier about the State Department funding these programs like the Global Engagement Center that they use to finance these technologies like NewsGuard and the Global Disinformation Index, where they recently attacked some conservative outlets, kind of pinging them, saying that they're not telling the truth and whatnot. This is the new reality where we are, and they're being sued, and we spoke with some of their attorneys a while back, and I'm glad that they're being sued. But it's just remarkable to me that the government feels the need, and I think you underscored a point when you said they feel like they're doing the Lord's work, and you're right, and of course they're devoid of that, but they really do feel like this is their calling in life, that they are somehow not the reporters of facts, but more so the guardians of truth. And I know that, in Levin's book on freedom of the press, he kind of walks us through how that change happened, but I still find it very remarkable. There's not a day that goes by where I get on this microphone and I think that I am the guardian of truth. I don't. I think that I tell you my story. I give you some news. I give you some opinion. Maybe you laugh a little bit. We take some calls and we move on. And it's really for you to decide, right? I put it out there. Brent Bozell comes on. We each share our stories, and people are allowed to think for themselves. I believe that it's that economy, that free marketplace of ideas that makes America so grand. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and what you've got with the left today, the media are working in lockstep with the federal government. You have got a militant federal government today. This is the stuff that I never thought in my lifetime that I would see in the United States. Take this, for example. The State Department through the embassy in Berlin, has been working with an organization in this university, Würzburg University in Germany, which is an uber left-wing university that specializes in censorship. Germany is the most censorial nation in the EU. Working with them, they came up with a program that the American taxpayer paid for that last year trained 700 educators on how to train children not to believe conservatives. That program has now been picked up by the Department of Homeland Security. You hear me right? Through an anti-domestic terrorism grant. Let that one sink in for a minute, where they are now expanding that program nationwide. It's a 3-phase program. This is being run with the organization is Literacy Now. Think about that. This is literacy now. 3 phases. Phase 1 is a public awareness campaign. They are paying people $250 per blog that they put up attacking conservatives, attacking Donald Trump, attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene, attacking people, probably you. And there's example after example after example. We found, by the way, we did all this through Freedom of Information Acts. If you ask the government, they won't tell you what they're doing with your money. You've got to do an end run or get around your own government. Think about that one. Phase 2 is the rollout of these seminars all over the country that they're planning. Phase 3, which they've just begun, and Rich, this is the dangerous one. They are paying up to $1,000 to children. In phase 2, they are teaching teachers how to teach children how to do with video games about how to go after conservatives. In phase 3, they are paying children down through kindergarten up to $1,000 for videos and blogs that they make attacking conservatives, attacking disinformation, which is conservatives, and denouncing those people who misinform on things like climate change, on transgenderism, on all the hot button issues. If you disagree, you are in the misinformation world, in their mind's eye, and they're using hundreds of thousands of dollars in American taxpayer money to give money to children and to adults to go on social media and attack conservatives.
That is astounding. And honestly, the worst part about it is that you and me are footing the bill, right? Everybody that pays $1 in tax is the sucker here, the fall guy. Because if George Soros wanted to do it, at least that's his money, not my money.
I have to repeat this again. I'm sorry. This is under an anti-domestic terrorism program. When they had that program, you would have thought they were going after, Al-Qaeda or the Taliban or the Houthis or something that might be infiltrating the United States. It's conservatives and Trump supporters.
Wow. It really is. It's a sad day. And I appreciate you bringing this to the table here and sounding the alarm on it. Folks, we're on with Brent Bozell. He's the founder and president of the MRC, the Media Research Center. And they do a lot of work. They've got a great website, newsbusters.org. It's one of the many things that they do. They find lots of excellent information. They monitor how much media bias is out there. If you're not following them and supporting them, you need to be. They also have a great cruise every year that you should check out. Anyway, we're coming right back with Brent Bozell to continue our discussion on media bias and how if you don't believe what the left is preaching, you might be labeled a domestic terrorist, and they might use your children to come after you. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5790. 5337-833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We're on with Brent Bozell. He's the president and the founder of the Media Research Center. And Brent Bozell, tell us a little bit about what your recent study found about ABC News, CBS News, NBC, or at least the networks, and how they were covering Trump most recently.
Well, it's deja vu, 2016 to 2020 deja vu. Throughout the course of his presidency, and actually going back to 2015, we looked at every month of coverage, every single month, funds from the big three networks, to see what level of coverage it was. The best month of coverage that Donald Trump received was in the very first month of office in January of 2017. That's when you have your honeymoon, and that's when the media leaves you alone. His coverage that month was 86% negative. That was the best month he ever had. Every month thereafter, it was 87, 92, 93, 94. And think about this. This is a man who created, I don't know how many million new jobs, who flattened inflation, who flattened interest rates, who had a thriving trade. Money or jobs were pouring back from Asia. No wars anywhere in the globe. He had stopped illegal immigration. I mean, there was just check mark. He'd been recommended for 3 Nobel Peace Prizes. For the first time ever, America was energy independent. I mean, the list of move to Jerusalem, the embassy to Jerusalem, I mean, the list of accomplishments was endless. There was one month during his presidency, I think it was July of 2019, that he got 100% negative coverage. Think about that. Not 1 second of positivity was said about him in the entire month. Well, now we've looked at 2023. We looked at the entire year for ABC, NBC, and CBS, and boom, there you have it again, 91% negative.
Wow. That's just amazing, right? It's amazing. Yeah. I'm looking at one of the stats here you got for all of 2023. Trump received 1,192 minutes of evening airtime, or 79% of all Republican candidate coverage. His challengers, DeSantis and Haley, were far behind with only 166 and 35 minutes of airtime, respectively. And it's interesting because the reason that they do cover Trump when they do is solely to bash him.
Yeah, and illegal. Look, here's one thing that's not covered by the media anymore, which is news. Whatever happened to coverage of what's happening in the world? Whatever happened to coverage of current events? Whatever happened to coverage of real news in Washington, D.C., of what's happening with the issue? Where's the coverage in the networks? This is the important thing, Rich. People can dismiss the networks and say, oh, they're dinosaurs. They're dinosaurs. Well, wait a minute. They're not exactly dinosaurs. If you total up the average audience of NBC, AB, or NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox, you get about roughly 2.5 million on a nightly basis. If you average the average audience of ABC, NBC, and CBS, it's 19.5 million. It's about 8 times larger than cable television. Why is that important? Because this is where Democrats go, and that's where they go to get their news. In 2020, we showed that we looked at all of the swing states to see how Biden's voters had voted on a number of issues. We asked them questions such as, did you know America was energy independent? One question after another. Biden's voters had no idea about that. And one after another, we asked them, had you known, would you have voted for Biden? And enough would not have that Trump would have won every single contested state. The big one was the laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop. This is the thing that they put the kibosh on completely. We as conservatives, we all think, well, of course, everybody knew about it. When we polled Biden's voters, 49.4% of Biden's voters had never heard of the laptop. when we told them about it, and then we asked, would you have voted for Biden? Not would you have voted for Trump, but would you have voted for Biden? 9.4% said they wouldn't. That would have been an absolute landslide for Donald Trump. He would have won a minimum of 317 electoral votes, probably considerably more than that. There would not have been many states that Joe Biden would have carried in the 2020 election had the media only reported the news. It's the only thing we want. Just report the news.
It's just a fascinating concept. And thank God for the work that you guys are doing at the MRC, where you not only report the news, but you report on the failure to report the news by the networks. We appreciate that.
Well, but let me pay the compliment right back. If it weren't for talk radio, if it weren't for you folks in talk radio, yes, there's social media, and that's good. But talk radio is the only vehicle, aside from some Fox shows, it's the only vehicle in America today where an issue is described and explained. Think about that.
Yeah. I totally agree. Listen, I love this format. What we do on social media is great, like you said, but it's bite-sized, it's quick, it's scrolling, and you're moving on. Talk radio is long form. You're able to get into an idea. You're able to have an actual discussion and help people understand the entirety of a topic. And you don't get that on TV, and you don't get it anywhere else.
I used to tell Rush Limbaugh that back in the day, in the Wall Street Journal, they used to say that if you wanted commentary, you went to the front page. If you wanted news, you went to the editorials, because that was what was happening. Well, the same thing is true for talk radio today. When you do commentary, when you do analysis, you base it off of news. So there is news in the commentary. There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on a news network.
Amen to that. Brent Bozell, I want to thank you for being here because you keep it real. You keep it gangsta, as they say, and you're doing God's work. You really are. Folks, Brent Bozell, founder and president of the Media Research Center. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I appreciate you staying up late to be with us.
Thanks, sir. Take care.
You bet. God bless. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion on number 2. You guys remember that movie Austin Powers, with Mike Myers and Robert Wagner? And there's a scene where he says, "Who does number 2 work for?" It's really funny, very funny scene. Anyway, number 2, and by number 2 I mean the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Vice President Kamala Harris. Of course, I'm joking about Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris means how bad she is in Spanish. And I think it's so fitting for a nickname for the Vice President. And I want to get into some discussion about her because there's some people that think that she might be it. There's always some innuendo out there that Michelle Obama might run for president. And I always reject that. We've had a guest on here that said that, and not that I reject, I just disagree. I don't think that that's going to be the case. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll eat those words. But I doubt that very much. I'd see, and I don't see Kamala Harris running either. So I'm really curious to see what is the play. And I think it just might be Biden. But we're going to talk about Kamala Harris and a whole lot more coming up straight ahead. If you want to join our conversation, feel free. It's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. Of course, you can also drop a comment on any of the social media at Rich Valdez with an S. All right, folks, keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. Hour number 2 is coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you tonight. It's Tuesday. It's not Tuesday. It's Thursday. Thursday night. The phone number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a date that has been set. Save the date. It's for the Hunter Biden deposition. He'll be under oath. That date has been secured. February 28th is, I think, the date that they've secured for that. As I mentioned earlier, Congress has passed a short-term spending bill, and Senator Grassley was released from the hospital. He was hospitalized. He's all right, thank God. And let's see, this is a good one. The DEA has seized enough fentanyl in New York City in 2023 alone to kill every single American. 386 million fentanyl doses were seized in New York alone. Wow. That's crazy. And there's a poll out that shows that Trump leads Biden with independent voters by 11 percentage points. I didn't look into that one yet. I'll let you know how Vice President Kamala Harris is doing on that front. I don't know how she's doing on that front, but we will we'll get into that a little bit. Now, I want to remind you that earlier in the week, Vice President Kamala Harris was on the View, and here's what she had to say.
And what are you going to do to stop the crazies?
I am scared as heck.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm traveling our country. You know, there's an old saying that there are only two ways to run for office, either without an opponent or scared. So on all of those points, yes, we should all be scared.
Now, that was on The View, and the co-hosts of The View were now in damage control during today's broadcast, cleaning up what Kamala Harris had to say. She was on Wednesday saying that she's scared as heck, right? They were defending Harris's take, partially claiming that she was not actually scared of Trump after all these media outlets ran with the clip and the story of that, like we did. And Whoopi led off calling Trump supporters the snowflakiest people and saying that there was plenty to fear with regard to Trump, whose name she still won't say out loud, and the possibility that he could return to the Oval Office. Joy Behar followed right behind her, saying that Harris had not meant that she was personally scared of the former president, but that she was scared for the country. And, of course, they felt the need to do that because, you know, Harris puts herself in these compromising positions, and then people draw inferences. That's just how this game works, right? Anyway, I want to get to the bottom of Kamala Harris from many different angles with a veteran journalist, somebody who's been doing this for more than a decade and a half. Charlie Spiering is the reporter with Breitbart News, a White House correspondent, former political writer for the Washington Examiner, and he was a reporter and a writer for Bob Novak at the Washington Post. And he started his career as a political journalist 15 years ago, working with Novak. And he's been on the climb ever since. And he's with us to discuss his upcoming book, Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House. That goes on sale in a couple of days. I'm sure you could get some pre-orders on that. So we're going to get into that straight ahead. But I want to bring in our guest, Charlie Spiering. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Reg. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So let's talk a little bit about the why, right? The why of why you wrote the book. Of course, we need a comprehensive examination of Kamala Harris, as I like to call her, because, you know, people look at her. She is the sitting vice president. But what was the impetus for you to dig into this topic?
Well, there's been a lot of Biden books, you know, but when you're looking at the future, you cannot look at the future without thinking of the possibility of a possible President Kamala Harris. If Biden wins re-election and doesn't make it through the next 4 years, she could very well be the next president. So maybe it's time for Americans to understand exactly what they're getting when they go to the polls in 2024, because it's a very real possibility that she might be your next president without even having to run an election on her own.
Right. And that's the scary part, right? That whole one heartbeat away from the Oval Office. Now, let's talk about how she struggled in the early years of being vice president with all of the difficulty she faced. She couldn't get a thought out right. She still can't in many ways. Everything comes out kind of jumbled, and she became the border czar, and that seems to have gone by the wayside. And it seemed like she just didn't get along with Biden, or at least with Dr. Joe Biden. What can you tell us about any of that?
Yeah, so I dug into her existing relationship with Biden, with the Biden family. Certainly the Biden family, especially Jill, maybe willing to forgive Kamala Harris for all the attacks against Joe during the election season. But she's not going to forget it, and she's certainly not going out of her way to build this warm relationship with Kamala Harris. And Team Biden feels the same way. They're not there to help her out or make her look good. They see her as a tool that they will need to win re-election, but they certainly aren't trying to help her beyond their current needs. They're not there to help her boost her political career. They believe that she is there to help Joe Biden, and that's it.
Now, I know that I've seen reports and I've heard commentary that, again, the Bidens were kind of difficult with her. You're saying they're cordial, or are they putting her on ice?
Well, it's just like politicians in Washington, right? In public, they're very warm and praising, but behind the scenes, they are very much putting her on ice. They're not giving her anything that they trust. They don't trust her to handle any serious issues for the president. They would rather keep her in the background and only pull her out to, go out to women, to young people, to, leftist activists, and especially to stoke any sort of racial controversy. That they love pulling her out for that. And that's kind of what she's been diminished. Her role is sort of shoehorned into these small categories, which kind of happens with a lot of minority Democrats. They find themselves just being servants of the ultimate power center, which is currently right now Joe Biden.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I don't think it's limited just to the Biden family, because I saw an interview that Nancy Pelosi gave to Anderson Cooper, and he said she seems well positioned to be the best possible running mate, and Nancy Pelosi's answer was, it was just shocking to me. She said, well, she's very good at what she does. And I wish I had the audio to play it for you, but it was very embarrassing.
What a great clip to remember. It was so shocking. That? The most powerful woman in American politics, arguably the most powerful woman in American politics, won't endorse the first female vice president for re-election. That goes to show you she knows, as a California politician, she knows exactly what's wrong with Kamala Harris, but she won't say it out of politeness. But she certainly isn't going out of her way to endorse her. That weird phrase she replied, well, Joe thinks she is, so that's good enough.
He said, is she the best person?
That.
And she said, well, he thinks she is. I couldn't believe that. What an insult. So
and it's not just Pelosi. It's Hillary Clinton. It's all the women in politics. They are not proud of her. And what was surprising about what I reported in this book, few Democrats in Washington like her at all. They are not happy with her. They don't like her. They don't like how she works, how she operates. And that's just the way Washington works. When you're found wanting her, if you have faults, they're going to just sort of quietly push you aside.
Unbelievable. Folks, we're on with Charlie Spiering. He is the author of Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House. The book goes on sale soon. You can get it wherever you get your books. Pre-order it on Amazon if you can. And we're going to come back. We're going to continue our discussion about Kamala Harris. We're going to hear a little bit of a history of her competitive background with Gavin Newsom, going back into her career in California with the Democrats, and a couple of more things about her relationship with Willie Brown that are documented in the book. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about her use of Black Lives Matter. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President Kamala Harris the best running mate for this president?
He thinks so, and that's what matters. And by the way,
you think so?
She's very politically astute. I don't think people give her enough credit. She's, of course, values-based, consistent with the president's values and the rest. And people don't understand she's politically astute. Why would she be vice president if she were not?
Do you think she is the best running mate, though?
She's the vice president of the United States. So when people say to me, well, why isn't she doing this or that? I said, because she's the vice president. That's the job description. You don't do that much. You're a source of strength, inspiration, intellectual resource, and the rest. I think she's represented our country very well at home.
Nancy Pelosi throwing Kamala Harris under the bus and ever so eloquently backing it up and driving her over again. That's great. Our guest is Charlie Spiering. He's written the book on Kamala Harris called Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House. I like to call her Kamala Harris. And Charlie Spiering, welcome back. I want to continue our discussion on why it's not just Pelosi, not just the Biden family, but so many that are just looking at Kamala Harris with disdain. And a lot of this goes back to her very competitive history with Gavin Newsom. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, you're looking at two ambitious proteges of Willie Brown in San Francisco. You know, Willie Brown is one of the most powerful political forces in California ever. And, you know, these were both proteges. Gavin Newsom became mayor. She became district attorney. And their careers have sort of blossomed in liberal California over the years, you know, fueled by the rich and the wealthy and the elites and the powerful. And they were both pushing each other's buttons, kind of frenemies. By 2016, these two ambitious politicians were both kind of eyeing the governor position. And then all of a sudden, Barbara Boxer steps down in 2016, opening up another slot. So Newsom ended up running for governor. Harris ended up running for Senate. And so, fortunately, they avoided what all of their supporters were expecting to be a massive collision. But they sort of avoided that with Barbara Boxer stepping back. And the rest is history. Kamala Harris ran and won for Senate. Gavin Newsom is now the governor of California. And wow, look, they're both on the national stage again and eyeing the presidency as their next step in their career.
And, you know, I find it fascinating that this Willie Brown had so much, gravitas with these people. He's such an influencer. How did their paths cross?
Well, Willie Brown, you know, one of the most powerful people in California, was a political mentor to lots of different California politicians. But he only dated one of them. I think just one of them. I'm sure he had some sort of relationships with others, but the only one that we know of and the only serious relationship he had with one of his proteges was Kamala Harris. They met right as he was running for mayor of San Francisco. And, you know, even though Kamala Harris was 29, half his age, Brown was then 60, they dated for about a year. At the same time, Brown was was running for mayor. And, was it true love, or was it kind of an advantageous relationship? Was it one based on politics and identity? Well, we know for a fact that Brown had no problem mixing the two. And so, yeah, Willie Brown helped her career, but he also did a lot more for her.
And in the book, and we don't have a lot of time, but as concise as you could be, because I think this is an interesting point here. What's the story behind Kamala Harris's parents being part of an intellectual group that admired and promoted Black nationalism?
Yeah, her parents, when they were at Berkeley, they were members of this Afro-American intellectual group in San Francisco, kind of the source of the Black nationalist movement and Black Marxists. Members cited Castro and Chairman Mao as sort of their heroes. Her father was described as a Marxist scholar when he taught at Stanford. So there was very much a big intellectual Marxist bend with her and her family at this point. Now, eventually, her parents separated, but this was very much the sort of atmosphere that she began her life in.
Outstanding. Now, Charlie Spiering, I want you to let everybody know how they get a copy of the book, the best way to pre-order the book, and well, let's start with that.
Yeah, it's available wherever books are sold as a pre-order. A lot of people use Amazon these days. It's there as a pre-order. Order it now. It'll show up on your doorstep on Tuesday.
Outstanding. And once they've pre-ordered and bought a copy for themselves and one to give away to somebody else, how do they follow you on social media and keep in touch with all the great work you're doing?
Yeah, follow me at Charlie Spiering on Twitter, or I guess it's X now, and then anywhere. I'm also Charlie Spiering on Facebook and Instagram. So, yeah, I look forward to. I'm really grateful to be able to reach out to your audience. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been driving in the car late at night, flip on the radio, and listen to your voice. So, really appreciate the chance to talk to you and your audience.
It's my pleasure, and thank you. I appreciate you listening to the show, and I wish you the best of luck with the book. And it really looks like a fantastic book. I mean, you talk about a lot of really interesting things about her career as a prosecutor, and just a lot of interesting stories that we haven't heard, and some that we may have heard only a little bit about, where you kind of unearthed the whole background behind it. So, folks, get a copy of the book. Charlie Spiering is the author. The book is Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House. It's on sale January 23rd. Go to Amazon. I always say get a copy for yourself, one for somebody else that could benefit from a really good read. So get 2 copies at a minimum. Again, Amateur Hour is the book, and you're going to learn all about Que mala eres, which is how bad she is in Spanish, Vice President Kamala Harris. Charlie Spiering, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I want to thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thanks so much, Rich. Great to be on.
Likewise. All right, folks, straight ahead, we're going to talk about cyber attacks, what to do in the event of a cyber attack. I know people don't typically think about this stuff. It's like stop, drop, and roll for fire drills, where we're going to learn about what we should do in the event of a cyber attack. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. And if you want to join the conversation, the number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And cyber attacks, they're all over the place. You've got a couple of hospital systems that are seeing a rise in hospital attacks. And let me see what else we got here. There's UC Irvine students. They're fighting back against hackers, posted gruesome images of them. JP Morgan is claiming that $45 billion were repelled in a cyber attack attempt. No matter where you look, you see that cyber attacks are here. They're here to stay. They're part of the future. They're part of the status quo. And we're going to talk about what to know and how to protect yourself from a cyber attack. I mean, most people know not to share their passwords over the phone or to input their banking information on websites claiming that they just won the latest iPhone and whatnot. But we don't really have much else to deal with, right? I think all of us do the corporate training through our job that says, to resist phishing attempts and whatnot. But we need to know what's going on, and we need the expertise of a professional hacker. And we've got such the person, Morgan Wright. Morgan Wright is a cyber terrorism analyst, chief security advisor at Sentinel One. He's a former senior advisor for the United States State Department in their anti-terrorism assistance program. And he's with us to talk about how to safeguard your own life, your personal details from a cyber attack. Morgan Wright, welcome to the program.
Rich, thanks very much, man.
You bet. So let's talk about this because, oftentimes I look at these cyber attack things from my perspective, right? I'm hosting a show. I talk about the latest story, the latest cyber attack, but I never really think about me getting cyber attacked. And I know that's a thing. There are these ransomware deals that are out there. There's a lot. And it seems to be affecting healthcare in a big way. What should people be on the lookout for?
We could probably break it down into maybe say three categories. One thing is,
Perfect.
When you're looking at like citizens, individuals, you, me, if we're just here doing our own thing, we're usually not the target of nation state attacks. The nation state attacks are going to go after bigger things, bigger targets. But here's what they're going to do, though. They're going to go after individuals to get access to systems to go after those big targets. So in a sense, you may not be targeted directly by a nation state, but you're targeted as a mechanism of access to bigger things. Then you've got these transnational criminal groups, especially that deal in ransomware payments or ransomware. So this is where they come after you. They target you again, or they target companies again. Look, hackers don't break in anymore. They simply log in. And one of the ways they log in is by stealing credentials, stealing data. So it's about identity. So they're after your identity so they can do these things. And then the third one are basically targets of opportunity. You've got malicious people, malicious actors, people looking to just in a sense, like anarchists, the old ways that Anonymous used to do things. So you've kind of got those categories, and everybody plays a role in those categories depending on if ransomware attacks only used to be against individuals. I mean, they weren't going against big companies because they hadn't figured it out yet. So actually, a friend of mine, an attorney, he got hit. They wanted $2,000 or $3,000, to get his data back. That's chump change now. Now you're talking about, like with MGM, you're talking in the tens of millions of dollars. So these attacks have gotten more complex. That they're making use of AI and generative AI. So we kind of got those three categories: the nation states, transnational criminal groups, and then ne'er-do-wells, malcontents, are just simply trying to cause disruption.
That first bucket that you mentioned, the nation states. I remember, if I remember it correctly, there was a big cyber attack against our country in recent years, and I think it happened more than once, the SolarWinds hack. And that, if I remember that right, that was through some sort of backdoor that Microsoft left open on an individual user's email account, and they were able to get into the SolarWinds network. Did I sum that up right? And if so, is that how it happened?
Yeah, there's kind of so. First of all, this was perpetrated by Russian GRU. So one of the advanced persistent threat actors, they call it. Yeah, and SolarWinds was what they call a supply chain attack. So it was about accessing. There's some dispute about exactly how that got in there because obviously Microsoft's saying no, we weren't compromised. But long story short, it's still going after the identity. It's still going after the individual. It's still finding a way to get in. And this was a long-term intelligence operation that targeted U.S. government entities like the National Nuclear Stockpile Agency, the State Department, all of those things. This was a operation by Russia to collect information, especially from email accounts. And I tell you what, I actually do a talk. I do a briefing around the coming Cold War in cyberspace with Russia. But I talk about what does SolarWinds and the Chinese, spy balloon have in common. And there's a lot of similarities between this because they've learned techniques to go out, like with SolarWinds, they were able to get into the update server. And what Russia really exploited was our trust we have of updates. So you click on an update. I'm a Mac guy, so when I get an update from Apple, I make sure, hey, yeah, it's legit. I have to authenticate to it. But we inherently trust, or we implicitly trust these updates, and that's what Russia took advantage of. People implicitly trusted the updates. They saw it. They installed it. Well, what they were installing were pieces of the code, and eventually, when the entire malware toolkit was built, which was called Sunburst, that was the operational aspect to this, and that's what ended up stealing a lot of this information. But to your point, whether it was by targeting an individual, a compromise of an account, or going after administrator, getting access into the system that way, it still starts with an attack against the identity, because that's the easiest way into a system.
Wow, that's a lot, but a very, very important part of life as we know it now, because that was a real thing. And I want to continue to talk about the other two sections straight ahead. I want to remind everybody that we're on with Morgan Wright. He's a cyber terrorism analyst, chief security advisor at Sentinel One, was senior advisor at the United States Department of State as through their anti-terrorism assistance program. And we're going to continue to talk about the other two categories that Morgan talked about when it comes to cyber terrorism and cyber attacks straight ahead. Plus, after that, we've got your calls with Open Phone America in hour number 3. The phone number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We are continuing our conversation with Morgan Wright. He's a chief security advisor at Sentinel One. And Morgan, one of our callers in Atlanta, Georgia on WGKA has a question about our topic. Let's quickly go to Alice very quickly. What's on your mind?
Hi. We need to catch a cyber stalker. My daughter has been stalked both physically and digitally over cell phones, internet. He hacks everything by a stalker, and he's really good. He's really on the par of your guest there.
Wow.
And
well, Alice, I'm sorry that you're going through that
guy.
and that your daughter's going through that. Let's see if Morgan Wright can give us a couple of tips on how to avoid being cyber stalked. Morgan Wright?
Yeah. Hey, first of all, part of my background to 18 years state and local law enforcement, I was one of the initial people involved in developing the investigation of computer crimes, and cyber stalking came along. First thing you got to do is that if this is occurring, you got to report it. A lot of people may think, well, the cops won't do anything about it. They will. I mean, you got to remember, though, that they're overwhelmed in a lot of sense, too, but you have to report this kind of stuff. Second thing is you got to take back control of your devices. So that means if you have a phone, either you need to do a couple things, which is factory reset your devices, which means wipe them clean and start over again, so that if there's any potential tracking software or anything on there, you get out of it, you wipe it out. And third thing you got to do is make sure that you lock down your accounts by using two-factor authentication. Change your passwords, lock it down with multi-factor or two-factor authentication. But the biggest thing you got to do is you got to report this, start locking down your devices. There's no silver bullet to doing this, but those are the basics you got to start with.
Well, thank you, Morgan Wright. Alice, we wish you the best with that situation. It sounds like a tough spot to be in. Thank you for your call. And Morgan Wright, this is interesting, right? This moves us into the next category, right? You mentioned nation-state attacks and these transnational terror groups, and of course the mom and pop cyber terrorist or cyber stalker in this case that Alice just brought up. And the average Joe, you and me, or even, somebody that may have a larger public presence than someone else, still an average Joe. We're not a corporation. We're not a federal government or state government. What are some of the things that we can do to even know that we're being attacked, or at least, spied upon?
Right. Hey, real quick, I want to correct something I said earlier. I said it was GRU that did SolarWinds. It was SVR. I apologize, Rich. I haven't been up this late since Russia invaded Ukraine, and I was doing interviews at 2 a.m. So,
I gotcha.
Yeah. No, there's one of the things you got to do is you got to have visibility over the things that you manage. So again, it goes back to fundamentals, blocking and tackling. It's like football or any sport, the fundamentals. So the first thing you got to do is make sure, like I said, you start locking down things. There's this new thing they call FIDO, F-I-D-O-2, but it's a way to use physical tokens now, or some kind of token, or like a biometric. Like if you've got like the iPhone, you can use your fingerprint, you can use facial recognition, things that an attacker does not have access to. So if they try to get into your network, it's going to block them. Simple things. Update your software. There's a reason they put out updates. Again, be careful. Make sure you're down. The updates are coming from a trusted source. If you've got old stuff, you're going to have to look at replacing it. Look, and I sympathize with the small businesses. It does not take much to put a small business out of business with a hack or an attack. So, most of these folks cannot sustain a $25,000 to $50,000 hit against their business, and some attacks cost far more than that. The average breach runs into $2 to $3 million in terms of just the average cost. So, a lot of these put them out of business. And you mentioned it earlier too, Rich. Things about training and awareness. Hey, look, folks, we're not storming the beaches at Normandy here, so don't feel you have to reply to every email that comes across saying, hey, you got to reply now, you got to click here, click on this link. Banking, anything dealing with banking information, anything dealing with sensitive stuff, what I just tell people is, forget the email. If an email says you got a problem, don't click on anything in the email. Go to the trusted source. Go back to your authenticated website. Go to Bank of America or Capital One or Citi or whoever you deal with. Go to that site, or you find the number and call customer service, or the fraud department, and find out, did you guys actually send this? And I'll tell you why. The use of generative AI, the use of AI to now create realistic and fake-looking voice and email. We're going to see stuff we've never seen before, and this is going to perpetuate that. That's why people just got to you got to take Edgar Allan Poe's advice from 1860. He said, believe nothing that you hear and only one half that you see. He was predicting the problem with the internet, 150 years ago, 60 years ago.
Very, very prescient of him. And something else I heard about, now that you were mentioning that, it reminded me that there were at some point counterfeit apps out there that were mimicking many types of things, and I think including financial institutions that were getting past Apple, the App Store, and the Google Play Store. How does somebody differentiate that? Because I think once you put your password in, you think you're downloading the right app, and then you're like, oh, shoot, I'm screwed.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, when you compare the two, Apple does a much better job than the Android store does for two reasons. Apple has what they call a walled garden. They control everything. They control the hardware and the software and the integration between the two. So while it's not impossible to get a bad app through the App Store process, and I've worked with people and developed some stuff with them where we've had to register and do the app, the authentication they go through is much more difficult than the Android store, which it could end up on multiple different types of devices, Samsung, and a ZTE phone and a Huawei. It could be all of these different platforms that are out there. So you will get these grayware or malware apps that will be on those sites, and definitely banking are one of the favorite ones they go after. And then that's the whole purpose. It's part of that is also social engineering. You look at it, it looks like the Bank of America app. So you go, oh yeah, I need that. And you click on the first thing that comes up, as opposed to, go to the Bank of America site and follow their link to the app, as opposed to being on the store there. That way you give yourself obviously a much better chance.
Yeah, good point. Folks, we're on with Morgan Wright. He's a pro when it comes to cyber terrorism. He's chief security advisor at Sentinel One, former senior advisor at the U.S. State Department Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program. And we're coming right back. We're going to talk about that third category of transnational terror groups when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And Open Phone America starts in just a few minutes. The phone number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We'll be talking about all of our topics tonight, plus whatever you want to bring to the table. And I want to circle back to our guest, Morgan Wright, cyber terrorism analyst, chief security advisor at Sentinel One, and former senior advisor at the U.S. State Department Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program. Morgan Wright, we were talking about that third bucket, the transnational terror groups, and we've got maybe a minute and a half or 2 minutes to wrap it up. What's the number one thing to look out for there?
The number one export of these groups is ransomware. And by the way, 74%, this is done by a company called Chain Analysis. They did research. 74% of all ransomware payments go to groups located in Russia. Russia is the primary country behind this because they operate with the implicit approval of Vladimir Putin. So as long as they don't attack Russia, they're allowed to operate pretty much freely. The colonial pipeline attack, things like that, those all come out of Russia. So again, but it goes back to they need entry into your company. So what do? They go after identity. They go after people who have trusted access. The MGM ransomware attack was done using social engineering, where they went on LinkedIn, they found somebody who worked there. The person put a lot of details out there that then the attacker used that to call the help desk to say, hey, I need help resetting my account, getting access, getting my password. And that's how they got into MGM. It was as simple as, it's like going to a bank and say, I want to rob the bank. They go, well, here's the combination. Let me help you with the money.
That's crazy. Unbelievable. Now, Morgan Wright, if people want to learn more about the work that you're doing at Sentinel One and everything else that you're doing, how do they follow you and how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, very simple. Just go to Sentinel One, Sentinelone, sentinelone.com. A lot of information on there, from webinars to white papers. Look, I'm not involved in sales. I don't sell anything other than ideas. And so you can go there and find it. You know, I'm obviously on Twitter, Morgan Wright _US. So anything, if you got questions, you got things like that, pop on there. But we work with a lot of the Fortune 100, the Fortune 50 government. A lot of the government agencies use us. So, we're out there. But, hey, biggest thing is to be educated, be well-armed, and, just make sure you just do the fundamentals each and every day. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and for heaven's sakes, quit clicking on links and emails. And no prince in Nigeria has $20 million they want to give you.
That's golden advice. And I could have given you that one. I didn't work for the State Department. Yeah. Morgan Wright, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for staying up late with us and giving us the scoop on this stuff. And I hope to have a chat with you again really soon.
Yeah, Rich. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You bet. God bless. Folks, we never, ever accept the link from the Nigerian prince that's giving away all that cash. And again, Open Phone America coming up right now, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're going to talk about a few different things. There's this one guy that got stabbed 24 times. Apparently, all of the migrants in New York are armed with knives. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. This is a time-honored tradition on this program where we call it Open Phone America, where you get to weigh in on all the topics we've discussed tonight. And we've talked about Kamala Harris. We've talked about cybercrime. We've talked about media bias in particular against Trump and all Republicans, and in fact, the MAGA extremists and whatnot. And I want to get into the border situation a little bit here. I'm looking at a report from the New York Post. And, oh, by the way, the phone number is 833-482-5337 if you want to join the conversation, 833-4-VALDEZ. And this report in the Post indicating that a security guard at a Randall's Island illegal immigrant shelter stabbed a 24-year-old illegal immigrant in the neck during a wild melee outside of the shelter earlier today, Thursday. The victim was found outside the shelter with a wound from an unknown sharp object around 3:30 p.m., according to police sources. He was taken by the ambulance to Harlem Hospital, where he was listed in stable condition. Sources say the suspect and the victim were arguing inside before the fight spilled outside, where this illegal immigrant was stabbed. Photos taken by a New York Post photographer show multiple suspects arrested at the scene, and I saw some video as well. There's I'll put this article on Twitter so you can take a look at it, and it's just an interesting thing, right? Because the headline that got me was, it said everybody's armed, everybody has a knife. And when I clicked on it, this was a story that I saw. And it reminded me of I oftentimes describe my time in government like that, saying, I feel like everybody has a knife and they're out to get you. But, multiple people being arrested here outside this shelter. Very interesting what's going on here. But that is the quote, was that everybody has a knife, everybody's out here armed. And including the security guard. And the security guard had a knife because the people in the shelter have knives, right? It's one knife fight after the next. And I remember when the UK, in particular London, started migrating people from all over the country, from North Africa and from other places into London. They started having an uptick in knife attacks as well. And just interesting to see that, this is now happening in New York City, this uptick with the knife fighting as well. So I want to get your thoughts on that and everything else that we're going to get into tonight. Of course, I want to get to some of your calls as well on the different topics. We talked about Kamala Harris, que mala eres. We've also talked about Trump and the censorship against him in the media. We also talked about the hacking that's going on, the cyber attacks, and just quite a lot that's been going on. So I want to get to your calls. Let's go to, let's see here. Eduardo, Tampa, Florida, WWTK. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, Rich, hello. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yeah, everybody hears you.
Yeah. Thank you for taking my call. Well, yeah, speaking of Kamala Harris, this is a lady who's from California. She should be able to speak Spanish. She had so many assistants that have been fired. That's a thing that doesn't come out. And I was listening to Director Homan during the day, and he was talking about
Tom Homan?
Some of these Homan?
Yeah, Tom Homan.
Yeah, Director Homan. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom Homan. There you go. Sorry, I forgot the first name. Yeah. And he was talking about some of these children, illegal children, migrants that are missing. He's talking about, well, they're probably working somewhere. They're being maybe abused or something like that, but they can't find them. They can't, they're missing, and that's kind of unfortunate. And also I want to get into, we have a lot of empty buildings. Do you think, like, later this year, are they going to be putting some of these people in some of these vacant buildings that are going to be folding?
Well, here's what I think. I want to talk about two of the things you mentioned because I think they're interesting. The first part about the missing kids, right? There was 58,000 missing kids that were identified in a congressional hearing. I think that was in 2022, honestly. I don't even think it happened in 23. But let's just call it last year. And those kids were never found. And every time there's a report, and just set up a Google alert, you'll find where these kids are ultimately. And you're right. They are probably being abused somewhere, being trafficked sexually one way or another. But many of them, especially the boys, they're being used as cheap labor in factories for these overnight shifts where nobody sees them. And, one day there was a story here. We have a little rundown. We call it the Midnight Zoo, where I get a bunch of different articles that we're going to talk about throughout the show with the producers. And we were going through the articles in it, and one of the stories was about a kid who, and I've shared this before, but it bears repeating. This kid had gotten his hand caught in a mechanical chicken separator. I believe he was 12 or 14 years old, and this happened somewhere in the Midwest. And my commentary off the air to the producer, Mr. Hinton, was I said, yeah, guaranteed. This is one of these unaccompanied minors, illegal alien, that came through the border and didn't come with a parent, and he's here and he's working, and he's probably being trafficked for work. They probably smuggled him into the country just to have this guy work. He probably doesn't even get to keep his wages, this poor kid, because the traffickers will take a piece of that, and that's how they do this modern-day slavery that Joe Biden's allowing to happen. And he looked into it further, and he came back and said, yep, you were right. The kid came through, the border as unaccompanied minor, thinks he might have an aunt somewhere in the country, but was not living with parents. And this is the sad truth that's happening. A few months before that, there was a bust at a couple of McDonald's restaurants, again, in the Midwest, a few of them. And I don't know if they were all owned by the same person or not. And they did a roundup, and they found there was a bunch of minors working there. Let me tell you something. Your kids, my kids, everybody that's listening, none of our kids are working the midnight shift, the overnight shift, the graveyard shift at McDonald's, right? My kids have worked in most places that take kids that are 16 years old. They require them to have some sort of working papers through their guidance counselor at their high school. And listen, I worked at 15. You had to be 16 in New Jersey to work, and I was working illegally as a 15-year-old. My mom knew the manager at a Dunkin' Donuts, and that was my first job before I became a barber. But ultimately, the point of this story is it's not that easy, right? So when people are doing it, it's because they're willfully complicit in doing this. They know that these kids are doing exactly that, right? That they're here and they're cheap labor. And this is why I take exception to the country club establishment Republicans that are part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that are all about having an open border and getting as much free and cheap labor as they can get, because that's not what life is all about. Now, Eduardo, you also mentioned something about the where are they going to live? What's up with the empty buildings? I can tell you my thought on this. I believe that we're getting more and more fascistic in the way that the government operates and the way it intertwines with both the media, with private industry, and the like, right? We've seen a lot of movement. We've seen banks get into a new business. It used to be banks couldn't wait to unload a foreclosure. There wasn't a bank, or very few banks, that were in the business of real estate. They would buy these things, they would sell them very affordably and say, look, we're not real estate people, we're bankers. And they would foreclose on a property and sell it very quickly. That's not the case anymore. We now have a lot of banks that have become institutional investors, and they're buying up things like single-family homes. Now, go figure, right? So just imagine you're like, oh, I want to buy a house in this nice suburban neighborhood. Oh, it's owned by the bank. And it's not a bank-owned property that you can buy at a discount or make a good cash offer. No, this is a bank-owned property that they expect to rent to you at a premium rent. So you'll own nothing, and they expect that you'll be happy. And this is, while it's always existed, institutional investors, I haven't seen it to the degree that I am now. I've seen articles suggesting that BlackRock and others and are buying up so many single-family homes that there's very little inventory for, my kids, right? I got a daughter that's about to finish college, 22 years old. And when she wants to go buy a house, there may not be inventory for her that she can afford, because it's all been snatched up by the banks. the investors, the Wall Street crowd. So that's part of the issue. Another thing that they're doing is they're building these some have dubbed 15-minute cities, and what they're doing is that they'll just develop a piece of land. They'll put some big anchor stores, whether it's a small mall, or they'll build a community around a large shopping mall so that you don't ever have to leave anywhere, and you can get everything done, for the sake of convenience, other than maybe commuting to work or something like that. And this is the new model, and they heavily populate these areas. And in New Jersey, I've seen a bunch of these being built, and I can tell you that when the government intertwines with private industry, this is where they come up with their deals, and they go, you know what, build this thing out. We'll do Section 8 because we have an influx of people coming in at the border that will qualify for Section 8, so the government will pay their rent, and we'll put them in the new luxury housing in these buildings that come with 2 or 3 bedroom apartments with 1 or 1.5 or 2 bathrooms, and pretty relatively new construction, oftentimes central air, just nice places that are going for $2,800, $3,500 a month, at least in the area I live in. And we're going to see those become, and they're building them everywhere. I think in one city in Bergen County, Hackensack, I think they're building 50 new buildings, right? So I don't know, it's something like 500 new units in a city that's already pretty populated. So they're going to add more people. And of course, we're adding people by the 10,000s every day at the border. So we'll have the people, and voila, there you go. You've got these new 15-minute cities within minutes away from New York City, where the government is going to pay for somebody to live a lot better than you and me are living in many cases. And you and I are going to foot the bill because we're the ones that are paying taxes above board. And that's an interesting proposition. But that's my thought on that, Eduardo. Thanks for the call. Big shout out to Tampa, Florida, WWTK. And the rest of your calls and more are coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We're hitting the phones. Let's go to Pendleton, Oregon. Check in with our buddy Michael on KUMA. Michael, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Great to talk to you.
Likewise.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to congratulate President Trump on his big win in Iowa. I was calling kind of along that theme that we're faced with a choice who's going to be our next president for 4 years. And we have all these problems, of course, the border, the economy, the foreign affairs, the war in Ukraine, Israel. And just last night on a talk show, Rich, right after your show, the talk show that Coast to Coast that comes on, a very good show.
Oh, yeah, they're after
yours.
us on some stations.
Yes, George Norrie, you guys are the best, Rich. And the concern, very concerning, they said President Kim has announced that he's made South Korea an official enemy, and South Korea responded that they will respond in kind to any aggression by North Korea. And North Korea now has many nuclear missiles, and our men and women are stationed over there, many in South Korea. And boy, when I heard that, that's a big concern. And it's like, okay, President Biden is in office now. How is he going to respond to that? But President Trump, me and my brother both agree, he's the best leader for us, and he has the best solutions to all these problems facing America.
Yeah, I think you're right, Michael. People did not appreciate the unconventional approach that he took in dealing with Kim Jong-un when he was what they like to say saber rattling with the United States. But Trump did the same thing, right? He tossed the conventional diplomacy out the window and said, I can rattle my saber too. And he did. And he said, little rocket man, we will shoot a rocket at you like you've never seen before, you know. And he had some tough words for him on Twitter and made fun of him. And again, not my approach. I wouldn't have done it that way, but it was effective in so much as he told him to stop. And most of that stopped. And when Trump was finally gone, it started again. And to me, I say, okay, that was effective. All it took was a little bit of a grip and grin, a little meet and greet. They walked, they shook hands, they had a little photo op, something that Trump was widely criticized for, saying, how could he legitimize a dictator by shaking his hand and going and talking to him? And listen, a couple of years back, I might have said the same thing. I might have said, you know what, we don't want to do that. We don't want to give dictators that position of power. But guess what? Shut him up. It pacified him. It worked. Trump's unconventional approach was a good approach. And we look at Biden's approach, which is more conventional, if you will, and it sucks. It's absolutely horrific. So, yeah, one more potential war that we're looking at with Biden. The good news is I don't think they're going to do anything. I really don't. I think this guy just likes to flex. He likes to puff out his chest a little bit and make some noise. It's good for him, for his business in being a dictator. But ultimately, he just wants to be alone in his fiefdom and have nobody bother him. Michael, thank you for your call. Big shout out to everybody on the West Coast, KUMA out of Oregon. Let us continue. Let's see who's up next. Gail in Enterprise, Alabama, listening on WDBT. Go right ahead. Gail, you're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, Rich. I have a question.
Hi.
Why is it that no one can talk about the geoengineering of the weather?
Yeah,
Because
well, I guess
where
we
I
could talk
live-
about it. I did a story about it a while back. During the Olympics that were in Beijing, I guess that was 2020 maybe, they were putting out stories saying they didn't have enough snow for the Winter Olympics. So China was using their 2022, excuse me. China was using their weather modification program. That's very public in China. And they were producing snow through cloud seeding. Now, we do this in the United States, but for some reason, and your guess is as good as mine, we don't really talk about weather modification in the United States. Our government programs that are that do cloud seeding and force rain and force precipitation, it's just not a thing of concern. And oftentimes it's met with obscurity, where we say things like, oh, that's not happening, or that's conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, in China, they're open about it. But yeah, it does happen in our country as well as in others, where we do modify the weather to grow crops and do other things. And who knows what else they're doing. When you can mess with the weather, what else can you do? So good point, Gail. I appreciate it. Folks, we're coming right back. Rest of your calls and more. It's Open Phone America with me, Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Continuing your calls. We've got a lot of calls on the line tonight, 833-482-5337. And we've been discussing the censorship against Trump that we're seeing in the media. We've been talking about the immigration problem that we're seeing in New York City, and obviously that's spilling over from the southern border. We've talked about cyber crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, about the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. And I want to go to your calls. Let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Joe, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Yeah, Rich. Who was it that said that I have a button, and Trump said I have a bigger button? Was that Kim?
Yeah, I think it might have been. That's right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
it may have been.
Good way to handle that. I'll tell you what, I'm getting weary of Joy Reid, Jezebels like her, and men and women both on the left that want to accuse Trump supporters of what they're actually doing, vengeance versus justice. What we need is justice, and when he gets in, and I believe he will, job one is to pardon all of those poor souls of January 6th. He said he would do it. I hope he follows through on that. But vengeance is malice, and it's really unseemly. And it's not something, they like what the forefathers called cruel and unusual punishment, and they done away with all that. But to actually have the penalties exacted for all these crimes that the left has committed, that's what I'm for. Now, pollsters have been, they're already starting after Iowa, and I just tell them, they go, well, what issue do you like Trump for? And I just tell them, as far as, we got a dozen issues. It's important. But I want to see him on day one take that up first, and that's important to me. What
Joe,
you say?
I think you were so spot on here. When you hear Joy Reid, the left, everybody else that's taking on that mantle of Trump is here for vengeance, he's going to lock everybody up. He's going to use he's going to weaponize the law enforcement establishment against his political enemies. You're right. I mean, a lot of this is projection, but is it vengeance or is it justice? And I think that's the question we need to continually ask, and people need to keep in the back of their minds. And if every act of justice is vengeance, then we live in a warped society. And I think that's how they're going to try and paint it, because, again, Trump can do no good, and those who support Trump can do no good. And it's almost like it's okay to exterminate us. I mean, it's crazy the way they've gotten, and I'm being hyperbolic now. But I went from being, a favorite customer at this bakery I go to. And, again, we're talking about $6 for a brownie. Not cheap. I go there and I buy 2 packs of cookies, 4 or 5 brownies, and a couple of the frozen things they sell there, and it's $50 or $60. And I find it to be a lot of money, but I can't get this stuff anywhere else. But the bottom line of my story is this woman is always very nice to me. Her husband, the sweetest couple, very nice people. But once I said something that I, didn't agree with the position she had on Trump, boy, she said, well, you're focused on the bottom line, and that's sad. And all I said was, I think my children and we all happen to be brown, because she mentioned that she's African-American. And she said, brown people like us, we pay the price. And I said, I can tell you, I don't think I paid any price. I think I've benefited from Trump being in office. I think my children have benefited from employment that they've earned and raises that they've gotten during the term of their employment. I don't see the drawback. And that was her response to me. And I was taken aback, honestly. I wasn't totally surprised, but it was just like, wow, didn't see that one coming, but not, disappointed, but not surprised, I should say. And she said, well, that's because you're so focused on the bottom line. And she made that, the universal sign for money with, your forefinger and your thumb there. And she said, and that's sad. And I thought, is it sad? Is it sad that we're focused on doing well financially? Where's the detriment of a guy like Trump in office for my children? I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see any detriment for me. I didn't see any detriment for the country. I think energy production was up. I think the investment that we saw from different industries was up. Household income, the median household income was up. It's down right now, $2,500 from the time that Trump was in office. I mean, just so many different indicators, so many factors. Inflation. What would any one of us would I'm going to use the word kill, but I don't mean that. But would really appreciate seeing Trump era inflation. So, I mean, at some point we have to say Trump was great. You know, we didn't have Kim Jong-un beating his chest. We didn't have Putin invading Ukraine. We didn't have Hamas invading Israel. And we didn't have Iran by way of Hamas or even the Houthis attacking the United States every time they can get at one of our people that's at a base overseas. We didn't have any of those problems. So, yeah, I'm with you. There was Trump getting nominated for Nobel Peace Prizes and signing the Abraham Accords. And it was just an interesting conversation. She was stuck on January 6th saying that it was horrible and we're going to see more of that. And I said Trump had the right to keep the documents. That was the other thing. He kept the documents. I said, I don't care about the documents. But even if I did, he can keep them. And she said, that's because you're listening to GOP lawyers. And so everybody was lumped into this thing. If you're part of the GOP, support the GOP, even listen to the GOP, you're one of the bad guys. Joe, great point. Vengeance or justice. I'll be sure to repeat that. I think that's an important point to underscore. Big shout out to you and everybody listening on that affiliate. And we continue with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So the Houthi rebels, terrorists, relisted as terrorists, they are continuing their attacks. The U.S. Have not stopped them just yet. We've been retaliating, but it seems that it hasn't continued. I mean, it hasn't ended officially. So we'll see how this continues. We're monitoring that, and we've got some audio. I don't know if we'll get to the audio right now, but we'll definitely get to it tomorrow because there's plenty to talk about here on this front. But I want to continue with your phone calls. It's been a great conversation tonight. And let's go to, Peggy. Peggy's in Portage Lake, Ohio, listening on WNIR. Peggy, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi. This is maybe a little off the subject. I hope that's okay. When I listen to talk show hosts and hostesses on radio and TV and podcasts, I get the feeling that there's a lot of divisiveness in their conversation. They need to take some lessons from you.
Oh, that's kind.
No, I'm very serious. Not every time, that's not fair. When they talk about Democrats, they don't always say liberals. They will say Democrats and lump them all together. When they talk about Republicans, they don't always say conservatives. They say Republicans and lump them all together. I'm a Democrat. I am so much in favor of closing the borders. That is very high on my list. My mom and grandma and family came here the right way 100 years ago. And I want everybody else to come here the right way, the way my mom did.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you, who are you voting for? If you've made up your mind, are you leaning towards Trump or are you leaning towards Biden?
I don't like either one.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, well, we know what Biden can do with the border and what he thinks of the sacrifice that your ancestors paid coming here 100 years ago. And we know what Trump would do. Ultimately, it's not a personality contest, right? And I get what you're saying, and I really appreciate what you're saying. I think the answer to this is straightforward. Maybe not simple, but straightforward. And the answer is there's this concept called the Overton window. I think it was John Mackinac Mackinac, I should say, that coined that term. And this concept is that you have to kind of shoot a little higher to make it in your Overton window, because it'll eventually get a little tighter, the window that you have. So I try to be precise in my critique of whatever's going on, because I do think that, while there's some benefit to having a liberal mindset, in so much as you consider lots of different approaches to things, right? Considering things from a liberal perspective. But I don't think there's a lot of benefit to enacting them from a liberal perspective in government, per se, right? I think in government, you do need a more conservative approach. You need a smaller government approach. And my critique is typically focused on the progressive hard left of the Democrat Party. I get that some people will not get as laser focused just because it's easier, right? It's easier to just say the Democrats. And people do lose things in translation. So while I might say, the pro-crime progressive prosecutors that are far left sympathizers, that's exactly what I mean. But somebody might quote me or listen to me or understand me differently, thinking that I'm talking about all Democrats or all progressives. And likely it's not too far off, because it's the base and it's the movement within, right? It doesn't mean you. And I think this is the reason why MAGA, Make America Great Again, the movement started by Trump, which in many ways is a continuation of the Tea Party of 2010, constitutionalists that just wanted to do what's right for America. They didn't like the Republicans either. And I think this is where we are. And I think Trump, in effect, ran at a great time. This is part of the reason he's as popular as he is. He ran at a time where the Republican Party was really dying on the vine, right? The George W. Bush wing of the party, if you will, that supports the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that supports massive immigration, illegal immigration, because, we need more people to work the difficult jobs that nobody else will take, rather than focusing on America first, was losing touch with American voters for quite some time on any side of the aisle. And Trump came saying the things that people in talk radio were saying, saying things that it's easy for me to be as critical as I am, because I don't have to work with Congress. I don't have to create policy. I don't have to do anything. I did work in government. And I can tell you I had to be a lot more structured in the way I addressed things, because you have to work with many people. Here, I can say what I want, because I don't have to deal with those people. And if my dealing with them includes me having a discussion with them on the radio. But in real life, you have to create policy and you have to work with the other side. So I say all of that to say, I think so many people gravitated towards Trump because he really started to stand for what people like you were feeling, right? And you may not like him per se, but the idea that, my family came here 100 years ago, they paid to get here, they had to acknowledge and uphold the public charge rules that said that they couldn't go on welfare and they had to pay their own way, and they need to sponsor a family member that said that we'll take care of these people so they wouldn't become a burden on society. All those rules that were once in play, they're not in play anymore, right? They're not there. And we're all suffering as a result of it. The country suffers, each of us suffer, and generations to come will suffer, because this stuff comes at a cost we can't afford and we're currently absorbing, and others will absorb after us. So I think you make a great point, Peggy, and I hope you make up your choice, your mind, and make the best choice for you. But I do appreciate your kind words, and I do think we need to not villainize the people, but villainize the policy. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We go to the phones. Let's go to Lisa, New Bern, North Carolina, WTKF. Lisa, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hi. I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. What are you thanking me for?
I get to listen to you just because, I listen to you, maybe two times, 3 times a week.
Thank you.
Love. I agree with, everything.
Oh, that's encouraging.
And I'm from Rockland County, New York. You know where that is.
Yeah, I know Rockland County. I used to work there.
Yeah, but I've been here for 30 years.
Nice.
In New Bern. I'm on the coast. I'm surrounded by water and the beaches, everything. Beautiful.
Great weather in North Carolina.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you. I agree. Biden is a criminal. Go.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Biden is he's run his he's past his shelf life, right? He's hit the expiration date. We've got to get somebody that can actually do the job in there. He's the only job he seems to be able to do is to keep him and Hunter keep their pockets fat. And that's not doing anything for me or for you or for your family. So I appreciate your kind words. Godspeed to you in New Bern, North Carolina, fellow New Yorker. And I appreciate it. Let's see. Can we squeeze another in there? Let's go to Jim, Chicago, listening on WGN. Jim, go right ahead quickly.
Richie, okay. My prediction for the Democratic presidential nomination would be Dr. Joe Biden as president and Michelle Obama as vice president.
Interesting. Let's see what happens. Let's take bets on that. I don't know. I think maybe it'd be the other way around, a different Obama-Biden, right? Maybe it'd be Michelle Obama. She's making some headlines today with people saying she's starting to lay the groundwork. And that may happen. Let me tell you, if that happens, she's probably the toughest force to face up against Trump, because I think the other ones don't really stand a chance. What we saw in Iowa, I think is going to be a repeat if he goes against Biden. But I could be wrong. We shall see. But I think the people are just tired of Biden. Nobody wants to deal with that anymore. Jim, thanks for your call. Big shout out to everybody in Chicago, WGN in the building. And I want to give a shout out to Diane, who's on WGN as well. We're not going to be able to get to you tonight, Diane. Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Kamala should be scared. I agree with you, Paul. And Frank in Evergreen, Montana, KOFI, making America great again by sleeping good. I think that's a good idea, Frank. Let's talk again tomorrow. Folks, until the next time, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I am Rich Valdez.